Greedy has been #1 on the Global 200 for weeks. Tate McRae's songs always do fantastically well, and this is a great example of expert production and songwriting. So in today's video, I'm going to break down how to reproduce this song, sharing all the tools, techniques, and concepts you can take away and apply to your own production. So without further ado, let's jump in. So first off, let's have a listen through and then I'll break everything down in detail. All right, let's start with the drums. So we've got our kick. I've got some transient shaping going on. I'm just boosting the attack, boosting a bit of the sustain, giving it a bit more meat, a little bit of EQ, attenuating some build up at 80, getting rid of the low lows. Then I'm boosting a ton of 30 hertz to give it that real bottom end. This is some before and after. Now there is a bit of gain happening as well, but it sounds way better. And then we've got our snare. Getting rid of some of the high end, boosting a bit of the mids. Again, some transient shaping, getting rid of some of the sustain, boosting some of the attack. Then we're layering that with a clap. Now that's adding the high end shimmer. Then I'm putting some sample delay just to put it out to the side so that there's a wideness to it. Then a little bit of EQ, just getting rid of some build up around 1 to 2K. So this is the foundational groove. And that just loops around the entire song basically. So there's a few little saucy things happening. There's some organic percussion that comes in and out throughout the duration of the drums. So the first thing is this. And I just made that sequence in EXO by Excellent Audio. And then I found a spray can sound. And then I'm just pitching that up a little bit, adding a bit of space to it. And in the context of the groove, it sounds like this. So just a few little bits that come out and tickle the listener's ear. Now we need to fill out the subdivisions. So we've got some percussion to help us do that. So I've got this stick percussion. And I'm just slightly pitching different notes up and down to give it some movement. Played around with the velocity so that it sounds more human. Things aren't 100% on the grid. Really want to give it that human feel now. And then I'm just using free clip to clip it just to tame some of the transient information because it's like really transient rich. Then I've got Valhalla Room, adding some space to it, and sample delay again, pushing it to the other side, creating some width. Then we've got our hats. It's a kind of hybrid shakery hat. It's that organic sound again, using sample delay to push it out to the sides. And just attenuating some of the high end. It was a little bit too sizzly. Then we've got a clap loop that I found on Splice. Sounds awesome. And then I've just degraded it a little bit. So I've added some noise to it that's following the sound. I've put some wobble, distorted the tone out of it, added some space, and I'm filtering it out. So there's not a lot of high end. It's just being pushed in the background and it's creating a lot of character. So with all the percussion, it sounds like this. And finally, we've just got a few little impacts and hits. So we've got this vocal hit. It's just a woo that I found on Splice. And then I've pitched it up, added replica to give it a long tail, and just done a little bit of EQ just to clean it up. So on its own, it sounds like this. And then with the processing. So it just helps to give it more of an impact. And then I've just got these impacts from Rob Late's pack. So there's a lot of bottom and then there's this shimmer of this layer of a chime happening. And then this other kind of filtered reverby hit. And together they sound like this. So we've got a lot of bottom and then we've got this tail. And then with the woo, it kind of gives it a little bit more excitement and character. Then we've just got a reverse going into this break and then a sub riser. just helping to give it more impact. And then in the turn just before verse 2, we've got this little drum break. So we've just got the drums carrying on through, then we've got this talking drum. I've just pitched it up again, added more transient information, less sustain. Then we've got another vocal woo and a short riser. So it's just creating tension and a little bit of differentiation before we go into the next part of the song. And in terms of the drum bus itself, I've got Saturn doing a ton of warm tape emulation, SSL bus compressor doing a slow attack fast release, letting all that transient information come through, it's giving it more punch. Soothe just to tame some of the harshness, and then match EQ, where I was just matching the EQ of the drums from the original track to see how close I was to it. And that's it for the drums. So next, let's talk about the bass. So we've got a really deep Reese. I use this preset a ton. It's from Big Z's Slap Essentials. I only really use these Reese basses with this. They're just the cleanest, hardest hitting Reeses for this kind of genre. And then I'm just filtering some of the highs and lows, adding a ton of saturation to the lows and mids. Got more going on here because I want to accentuate this area to help it cut through, and then a ton of sidechain compression to the kick to give it that pumping. And that's it for the bass. All right, let's move on to the melodic elements. So we've got this marimba, this mallet sound. To create something similar, I've got 2 layers. This is our first layer. So we've got this A-A-A-B melody. This is the underlick that carries through the whole song. It's the melody that starts the song out and it just carries on throughout the whole thing. And for the first layer, I'm using Contact. I've got this orchestral percussion marimba. And then the second layer is Contact again, but we're using this Celesta. And together, it sounds like this. So we've got a little bit of sparkle from the Celesta, and then we've got the marimba, which is the main meat of the sound. And I'm doing a lot of transient shaping throughout the whole track. So there's a bit more attack, a little less sustain, just helping it to feel a bit more 3-dimensional and cut through the speakers. And finally, we've just got some synths and Atmos. This is the part of the production that really glues everything together. It's a very minimal production. Like most really huge songs, 9 times out of 10, they tend to be pretty minimal. And it's just real expert use of what needs to be there, and you know, nothing is there unintentionally or just for the sake of it. First off, we've got some pads. Just filling out the chords and creating some more harmonic content. And I'm using a World Away preset from Make Pop Music. I played around with the hyperdimension just to give it a bit more width. And then I'm just doing some EQ, getting rid of the lows and low mids. And then we've got another pad. It's just doing the octave above, and we're just creating some differentiation, character. It's a little bit more distorted, doing some EQ again, getting rid of the lows and low mids. So there's not too much of a build up happening. Together the pads sound like this. Really just filling out that part of the frequency spectrum. And then we've just got a few little Atmos bits. So we've got this panning vox. And that's just droning throughout the whole chorus. And to do that, just used arcade, distant voices. I found a playable loop that I liked, just held it down. And then I've got a shaper box, and then I have a 4-bar panning automation on here, and then the mix is just around 70%. Just creates a bit more movement in the stereo field. Quick sip of coffee. Then we've got some Foley of some people in a mall. So it's just like a crowd, basically. And then I'm just shaving out all the lows and some of the low mids because we really don't need that information. And what's really cool about this is, it's not exactly the same as the original, but if you were talking about the emotional intent, the song is about being greedy, and, we've got people in a shopping mall, so it's kind of playing on that idea of consumerism and wanting more and being a taker and all that kind of stuff. And one of the more identifiable parts of the song is the synth drone. So what's really cool about this sound is it's got a very Y2K pop sound. So to find something as similar as possible, I went straight to a K-pop pack that I have, and by some miracle, the first preset that I found was pretty close. So the main thing that I really played around with was vibrato and the portamento. So everything kind of slides up and down with this synth, and on its own it was just a basic pad. So I clicked on portamento, pushed it up to around 500 milliseconds, so it glides up constantly, it's very prominent. Then I played around with the LFO to the coarse pitch and made a little bit of vibrato on the note, so it kind of warbles a little bit. Then I've got some phase distortion just to add a little bit more hair to it, make it sound a little bit more present within the context of the mix, and then some soothe just to soothe out some of the mids. And finally, we've just got this little riser. And as you can see, what I've done here is I just created that with this same pad. I just picked the note, and then what I did was automate a pitch bend to come all the way to 24 semitones, so 2 octaves. You can see there's the pitch wheel, and it just bends up and it creates this tonal riser. And again, we've got that very Y2K feel. And what that does is leads us into the turn here where we have this drum fill. And that's it, my friends. A really great demonstration of how minimal productions can be, but how effective they can be when you're extremely intentional, you pick interesting sounds, you play around with the character of them, and you do everything to serve the emotional intent of the song. Hope you guys found this helpful. Thank you so much for watching. If you found this helpful, be sure to give it a thumbs up and consider subscribing if you haven't already. And if you want to see how I reproduced Happier Than Ever by Billie Eilish, click the video right here. And until next time, create courageously.